In this video, I'll show you how to go ahead and build your customer list screen. Go ahead and log into Mendix and open up your app if you're not there already. Okay, so the last thing that we worked on was to set up the home page. We want to configure this area right here so that if Hannah or one of her employees clicks on it, it goes off to the customer list page. Before we start to build this in Mendix, let's go ahead and review our design. So what we're going to build right now is from the home page, we just set up a customer button. And what we want to have happen is if this button is clicked for the customer, then the user is taken to this customer list screen. The customer list screen is going to show the name and the phone number for each customer. So let's go ahead and build that next. Go ahead and open up your Mendix Studio Pro if you have, and get into your app. Now, as a quick check, before we go to build the customer list page, make sure that your domain model is all set up. I'm going to just double check, go over to the domain model, double click, and you should have your two entities here, one for customer, one for product. If both of these entities are not there, go back, watch that video on how to create your database and make sure that these two entities are there before you move forward. Okay, let's go back to the home web page and we'll set up that button to go to the customer list page and we'll create our customer list page. So what we want to have happen is if the user clicks in this area right here, they'll go to the customer list page. Now, if you remember, to create our button, we drag that card action with image object, that building block, out here to our column. And so what we want to do is we want to select the container that was dropped into. Now, in order to find the container, you can sort of hover around. Here you can see I've got layout grid. If I move down a little bit more, there's the container. So once that little, you've got your dotted line in the word container, just go ahead and click and it'll select this whole area. So we want to configure this whole area as our button. Now, sometimes it's a little bit hard to select something specifically in Mendix, like the container. Let me show you a couple of easier ways to do it. Let me unselect it first. If I go ahead and I select something within the container, maybe I just do the text where the customer was. Remember how we talked about that there's a breadcrumb down here, so that our text object that we just selected is within a column, which is within a row, which is within a layout grid, which is within a container. And this is what I'm trying to select as container. So if I just pick something detailed within, and then I use my breadcrumb to find the container, I can just click on my breadcrumb and it'll be selected. Another way that I can do that, let me unhighlight this, is over on the left-hand side. If I use Page Explorer, if I click on that, we can see this is the whole structure of my home page. And I can see as I sort of move my cursor around, you can see over here that it's sort of showing what's this sort of highlighting over here as I move my cursor down. So there's my layout grid, there's my row 1, my autofill, and there's my container again. So I could select it using the Page Explorer navigation. All right, once you've got the container selected, double click on it and we're going to configure that container. Double click. And down here where it says events, we want to set up an on-click option. Right now, if you click in this area, it does nothing. We want to set this up. So if you click on that container, it's going to open up your customer list page. You can see these are all the options for on-click actions. We want to show a page. Click show a page. And then it's going to say, well, what page do you want to select? Or which page do you want to show? Well, we haven't created our customer list page yet. So we're going to say it's a new page. We're going to come down to the bottom to this button new at the bottom of the select web page box window. And we're going to select that. So go ahead and give your page a name. We're going to call it customer list. And the default layout, we're going to use this Atlas default. And we can see along the side here, there's all sorts of different types of pages that we can create. We want a list page. So we're going to choose over here for the options on the left, lists. And then we're going to choose this very first list right here. List, and we'll say okay. And okay. Okay, now let's go look at that customer list page. I'm still over here on Page Explorer. So go back to App Explorer. And we can see that customer list page right here. You know, we've done a fair amount of work. Let's go ahead and save what we've done so far. File, save all. All right, and now let's double click on customer list to open up that page. All right. So again, just like our web page, we can go ahead and start to configure this. I'm going to take page header title. That's not a very user-friendly title for my page. I'm going to double click on that, and we're going to call it customer list. We'll say okay. And we'll do a subtitle here. You can pick whatever subtitle you'd like. And then we're going to come down and we're going to configure this list right here. Now, in order to configure this list, the first thing we have to do is we have to tell the system where to go get the data from for this list. It's going to go get that data out of the database, right? We're storing our customers in the database. So that's where we're going to go and read the database. We're going to select a row so that's where we're going to go get our data from. So in order to do that, we need to configure this whole list area. And that is what's called the list view that we need to configure. Again, you can hover around until you see list view highlighted. You can select something down in your list and then come and find list view in the breadcrumb, or you can use your Page Explorer. I like to select one of the detailed items and then come up to, using my breadcrumb, select the list view. And you'll see with the list view, it's highlighted this whole area, and it says right here, no data source. So we need to configure this whole area to say, go get the data out of the customer entity. So we're going to double click on list view. And from that, we're going to come to data source. Click on data source, and it's going to go get the data out of the database. And then we need to go the entity. We need to go select that. And it's going to be customer. If you don't see customer there, go back and check that domain model. Maybe it didn't get set up properly or saved. So select your customer entity, select, and okay. Now it says, do you want to automatically fill the contents of the list view? You want to say no to this. No, we are going to configure it to show on the first. In review, what do we want on our customer list screen? We want the name and we want the phone number. And that's all we want. We don't want all the data out there. That would be too busy. So right now, it just comes as a default configured to just show the static text, list item title. If I double click on this, I really don't want just those words to show up. That's totally useless. What I want is for it to go and get the data out of the database. So I'm going to set this up as what we call in, so what is called like a parameter or a variable. It's just going to be a little placeholder that I'm going to define and say, in place of this parameter, put the customer name. Let me show you how to do that. So let's go ahead and edit this. And I'll come back to this and see where it says parameters here. We're going to add a parameter or a variable for our customer name. And it's going to be a brand new parameter. So click the new button. And it's going to be an attribute. And we need to say what attribute are we going to display there. So click select. And you can see, hey, look at that. There's all of our attribute choices from our customer. We're going to choose first name and select. So remember how we configured this whole list area to say, get the data from the customer entity. And now what we're defining is to say on that first line, come and show the first name and select. And say, okay. And I've kind of got windows on top of windows on top of windows on top of windows, but we're right here in this edit template parameter. We say, okay. And notice now what it creates here where I edited my caption. Under parameters, I now have defined first name. And see how it has this little curly bracket 1? That's kind of the name of my parameter. I know it's not very friendly, but that's how Mendix does it. So up here in my caption, I'm going to come up here. I don't want the words list item title to appear. That's useless. I really want the name. And I'm going to put in the parameter name, which is curly bracket 1. Yes? It's a little programming. This is the most programming it gets. Okay, and we're going to say okay. And we're going to say okay. Now notice that Mendix is nice. It doesn't just show curly bracket 1. It actually puts in our data element name. So that kind of gives us a warm and fuzzy that we've done this right. All right, let's go set up this second line here then to be the phone number. So I'm going to click on that to highlight it. I'll double click to open it up. I don't want it to say the words secondary text. That's kind of boring. So we're going to edit it. And I'm going to come to my parameters and I'm going to set up a curly bracket parameter to hold where the phone number goes. So under parameter, I'm going to click new. And it's going to be an attribute. And I have to go select it. And there's my phone number. And select. And I say okay to the phone. And I get now my curly bracket 1 related to phone. Curly bracket 1, I want to be on the second line. And we say okay. And we say okay. All right. So now we have configured our customer list screen. Let's go ahead and save. File and save all. Okay, so now you've configured your customer list page.